Great. I'm just doing this temporarily. I have no aspirations. So I just helping out Leah and Vince. Good morning. The open meeting of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee is convening by video conference pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. This meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that other people may be able to see you and recording these phones and devices. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting may feature public comment. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and acknowledged by and speak through the chair. Use the raise hand feature in Zoom to indicate that you'd like to offer a comment. The chair will call on those who have raised their hands in the order they were raised. All questions should be directed through the chair. If you are not able to participate in the remote meeting, also enter the Coastal Resilience Coordinator, Leah Hill, and request that they be read into the meeting. Ms. Hill at nantucket-ma.gov. I'm Gary Beller, a member of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Sarah Boyce.
Here.
Peter Brace. Not here.
Here.
Okay, I see Kim Brain.
Here.
Here. Yeah. Okay, Jennifer Carter, Joanna Roche.
Gary, I need to interrupt.
Yes.
Your sound is a bit glitchy. I think you just said Jen Carberg. Can you start from Jen Carberg again, please?
Okay, Jennifer Carberg,
Here.
Joanna Roche.
She's not here yet.
See her. Rachel Freeman. Don't see her. Christy Kickham.
No.
Carl Borchert.
Here.
I'm here, of course, and Doug Rose.
Here.
I think you might need to get Tim to confirm. I don't know if
And staff.
And Matt Fee here.
Was the staff Vince
I'm here.
yet, and the speaker. Go ahead.
Sorry, your sound is very glitchy, Gary. If
Okay.
you don't mind, can I just make sure a few
Please
people?
continue. Yes, please continue.
Tim Brain. You need to unmute and confirm.
Yes, I'm here.
And Matt Fee, I heard you confirm as well. Are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just mine is glitchy too, so I don't have my camera on.
No, you're fine, Matt. Thank you. Gary, back to you. And sorry for the interruption.
Okay. And finally, the speakers on the agenda is that one speaker we have planned is Emily Goldstein Murphy.
I'm here.
Okay. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by the roll call vote. And I think that's the end of the script. The next item on the agenda is the election of officers. And we have three officers, the chairman, the vice chairman, and the secretary.
Ahead of time, if you don't mind, Gary, if I may.
Please take over, Vince.
Ahead of time, I believe there was two people that expressed interest in two positions. And they can change their minds, obviously. I believe Doug Rose had interest in the secretary position, and I believe Peter Brace had interest in the vice chair position. And I don't believe anyone's expressed interest so far in the chair position. But by all means, this is now a committee discussion.
I don't know
Sarah,
who
go
to
ahead.
ask to call me. Thanks, Gary. I just for the sake of knowledge, I am taking the notes for today's meeting, but I support Doug in his interest in being the secretary.
Is that a motion? Can I second that?
Yes, that can be a motion unless there's discussion about secretary. If Doug wants to say anything.
Gary, can I speak?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I just want to let everybody know I'm happy to take minutes and serve whatever other duties of the secretary there may be. But if someone else would like to do that, I'm not going to be disappointed. I just want to let you know I'm there. I'm there and happy to do it if nobody else is. Thanks.
I think Doug's a good choice. So any other people interested in? I mean, Peter's not on. I don't know if we should vote Peter. Carl, go
right
ahead,
here.
Carl.
Gary, do you have gallery view on? If you do, then you'll see everybody. So click in the top of the screen, the top right where it says view, and click on gallery.
I have everybody here.
Okay, I'm here. My video's on. I'm wearing a
Okay,
red
I'm
shirt.
sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't look at all of the stuff.
Carl Borshett has his hand up.
Yes, Carl, go ahead.
For the records, Dr. Boyce, are you interested in being chair?
Can I respond? Through Gary, thank you, Carl. I don't think I can take on the time commitment involved in being chair, but I appreciate the question.
Okay, I would support Doug Rose and Peter Brace for secretary and vice chair. I'm out. This is my last meeting, so I'll vote on officers.
So what are we voting on now? We have a motion to have Doug Rose as the secretary.
I beg your pardon, Gary. Sarah has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Thanks, Gary. Before the full vote, I wanted to, through the chair, ask Peter if, I know you're interested in vice chair, would you consider chair?
Well, it's cool that somebody who I greatly admire and look up to thinks that I would be chair, but I'm on this board. I'm on the Harbor Plan Update Committee, where I'm the secretary, and I'm on the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, where I'm also secretary. As you can plainly see, I'm wearing a town t-shirt. I am a seasonal shellfish collection technician. I'm a beekeeper with 25 hives, and I guide people in the summertime. So it depends on the commitment. I'm more articulate when I write, when I type, than I am talking. I would certainly give it a shot, but I don't know what the time commitment is. And I wouldn't give it a shot unless we had a vice chairman. So I don't know, it's a big responsibility, right, Vince?
Correct. And if I might, Gary.
Yes, go ahead, Vince.
Thank you. So just to run a scenario through, let's imagine that Doug is secretary and Peter is vice chair. Unless you elected chair pro tem for the rest of this meeting, then it would probably fall to Peter to chair the rest of this meeting, just as a kind of a point of order of sorts.
Thank you, but I think that Sarah had a good idea, and Peter, I think it'd be a great chair. I personally think it would be good for someone who's local, who's a full-time resident like yourself, and who's involved in so many things on the island. So I would support that.
I don't know, I'm nervous. Am I gonna, following in Mary's shoes, And I'm not as disciplined and regimented in the way I talk on a public meeting. So you guys might not like me as a chairman. I don't know. I mean, how much time is it, Vince?
Usually at least a couple of hours every Tuesday is the way that I had worked it with Mary and the way that Leah currently works it with Mary. So there's clearly the 2 or thereabouts hours on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of the month. The prep time ahead of a meeting is usually at least an hour, sometimes more, to get the agenda sorted, because the chair sets the agenda. Staff really do help out a lot in getting the topics together, organizing speakers, getting all of the postings done. But we can't do any of that without the chair's approval. The chair is the person that does that. And it's usually at least 1, if not 2 hours on a Tuesday when we plan it. We have to get it posted on Thursday. So then the agenda gets drafted, and then there's a lot of emails backs and forwards to finalize, make sure everything's happy, make sure we have confirmed all the speakers. And then it's on the day of the meeting itself, it's usually maybe 1 or 2, a few minutes ahead of time that I have that myself or Leah would chat with the chair just to make sure that everything's set, confirm which members have said they'll be present or absent for the day or anything like that. There's more to it than any other committee member.
And it's only for a year, right? If we're following the way the town goes, not for the whole term.
No, just for 1 year. But I have to say openly, if you decided to do it for a while and then step down, literally at any point, any meeting, you could elect another chair. It doesn't have to be for the year. It can be for as long as you're comfortable with it, or for the full year. You have it until the 1st of July 2024, or if you decided to say at any particular meeting in the interim, next meeting, 6 months time, whatever it is, you could say, all right, I've given it my best shot. I don't have the time anymore, particularly seeing as how it's summer or whatever, or because something's happening in the fall or winter, and then you can decide to step away at any point. But that is your prerogative.
And also when we go before the select board, then it's me talking to them, right? With the aid of the coastal resilience coordinator, or we have some event, and it's me talking to them, or so that's you guys putting the faith in me to say the right thing without saying any expletives or messing up, or so. I just need to say that the Harbor Update Plan Committee installed me as secretary when I wasn't at a meeting, only because I hinted to Jesse Bell that I might be interested in being secretary. And the next meeting I come back and I'm secretary. So, and I haven't been a very good secretary. So, but this is different. So, well, I'll be chairman if Sarah will be vice chair.
I'll second that.
Sarah?
I would be okay with that, and I would be okay being Peter, if being a backup, especially for if there's a select board meeting and you can't go or don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I could take on the full commitment of the chair, but I do feel like I can be a support, if that.
Well, I can tell you that in the whole time that I've been vice chair, I haven't had to run the meeting. And the only thing I had to do to back Mary up is when we had that municipal vulnerability program 2-day session at the Nantucket Hotel, maybe a couple of years ago, 1.5 years ago. I went in her stead because she didn't want to go because of health concerns. So there's not, anyway. And as the person who collects the shells on Sundays and Tuesdays and Fridays, that's going to be a challenge in preparing. So.
Well, this sounds great. This sounds great. I think we have a slate now.
We'll give it a shot. I can't say I can commit to a year.
So we have a motion for the full slate of Peter Brace and Sarah and Doug. There is motion. Someone wants to make that motion?
Can I interrupt? I beg your pardon, Gary. can you rename each candidate and the position that they're going to be voted into, please?
Okay. So Peter Brace would be the chairman. Sarah Boyce would be the vice chairman, and Doug Rose will be the secretary.
And you need a second.
I'll make the motion for that slate.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor by a voice vote? Matt Fee,
Aye.
myself, Gary Bell, yes. Jennifer,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce, you can vote.
Aye.
Peter Brace,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Carl Borchardt.
Aye.
I think that's, and Tim Brain is not on, or is he?
Ra-
He is.
Rachel Freeman is on, Gary.
Oh, good. Tim,
Tim is aye.
great. Okay, so it's done.
Gary,
Sorry, Gary, Rachel Freeman
Yes,
is
sir,
also
Carl.
on.
Rachel Freeman is on, Gary.
Okay, Rachel,
Aye.
thank you. So congratulations to our new team. And with this, I'm turning this meeting over to Peter Brace. You can introduce our next speaker, Emily Goldstein Murphy.
Okay. So what
I
do we,
think the next, actually,
We're on-
the next
we're on
order of
the-
business,
we're on
the
the
next
approval
order
of
of business
minutes.
might be the minutes.
So approval of minutes for May 23rd, 2023.
Move
Do I have a motion for that?
Move approval.
Second?
I'll
Somebody
second.
But before you get to that, can I ask a technical question? There was two comments that Leah had within the draft. Can I put them on screen?
Yes, okay,
No.
I'm sorry. Peter, you're running the meeting, not me. Yep,
Oh, Gary, I mean, if you want to jump right in.
I'm retiring.
Yes. Vince, go ahead.
Thank you. So my thanks to Leah for preparing all this and prepping me while she is elsewhere. She had a couple of questions she wanted to make sure the committee members were provided feedback on. She made the amendment to add the recording. And she had made a text edit to give a location where a house had fallen into the sea, and we could then remove the second part. So you're accepting North Carolina Beach House falls into the sea and the ocean from the Washington Post. And then the second one is there's a question over Mary's article that is within the packet and part of the quarterly update to the select board. And the question is, should this be read verbatim into the record when it's presented to the select board? Probably, I should imagine, the beginning of August at this point.
Can I comment? Sorry.
It's up to Peter.
Peter, can I comment?
First, Sarah, go ahead.
So I took these notes, and when I typed that, it was because that's what was said, was like whatever Mary had said was like, this needs to be verbatim. And so I typed that in and I didn't go back. So I think rather than putting it verbatim here, if we can link to wherever it is verbatim, I think that's fine, if that's what you're suggesting, but.
Yeah, I think you could just, I mean, if you can actually find the top, how far it is in the minutes on the YouTube video, then you could just put the time in and put the link in with the time.
I'm glad she caught that. Sorry, I didn't fix that part.
No worries. And I think that's it. Yes, correct. So thank you for that, Peter. Sorry for that. Thank you for indulging that. You're about to go for your vote.
Okay, so roll call vote. Are we here? Okay, I'll just start and go across the board here. Carl Borchardt,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye,
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Jen Carberg,
Aye.
David Bailey,
I beg your pardon, David Bailey is not a member. The two new members, Peter, are Tim Brain representing the Conservation Commission and Doug Rose as an
Okay, sorry, Tim Brain,
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't in the meeting.
Sarah Boyce,
Approve.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
Okay,
You got a vote too, Peter.
what? No.
You have a vote too.
Aye. Chair votes aye. Okay, next item on the agenda is presentation on joint land bank and sewer departments SNEP grant proposal for Lily Pond by Emily Goldstein Murphy, research ecologist for the Nantucket Land Bank. Emily?
Hello, thank you, Peter, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to present on our grant application. I'll just share my screen to get the presentation up. Can you see that all right? Everyone can see that? Okay.
Yes.
As Peter said, I am the research ecologist at the Nantucket Islands Land Bank, and we recently submitted a SNEP grant for the Stormwater and Natural Infrastructure Grant for the year 2023 with our partners, the Sewer and Stormwater Department for the town of Nantucket. Our grant application was titled Lily Pond Stormwater and Habitat Restoration and Nantucket Harbor Watershed Green Infrastructure Planning. So quite a title. Leah asked me to present a bit about SNEP itself and a bit about our grant application. So here we go. SNEP is the Southeast New England program. It is an interagency group formed under the EPA to coordinate and to catalyze the efforts of the federal, state, and local agencies, as well as research institutions and NGOs that are working in the coastal watershed of this region. So these programs are bound together to implement programs that restore and preserve and monitor the ecosystems in this coastal watershed. You can see here that there are 133 municipalities in the SNEP region that are at least partly or wholly located within the boundary. This is all of Rhode Island and the southeast portion of Massachusetts, including the Cape and the islands. This is the cover page of the current strategic plan for SNEP, getting to resilience, restoration, and adaptation in the southeast coastal New England. This is available from the SNEP website, and I encourage all of you to go and look at it. It isn't that long, it has some great figures, and it really helps to explain the goals and priorities of the EPA and the other agencies in this region. So they have goals on studying the effects of climate change, how to monitor them, how to make progress towards achieving those goals, how to measure what's going on. Like I said, it's an interesting document and a pretty quick flip through. So briefly, those goals for 2050 in the strategic plan are a resilient ecosystem of safe and healthy waters, thriving watersheds and natural lands, and sustainable communities. So they set out a 30-year framework to achieve these goals by 2050. One of the ways that they hope to achieve this is the Stormwater and Natural Infrastructure Grant for this year. A bit about this grant. The total program funding is $2.3 million. They anticipate awarding up to 6 awards of $400,000 to $600,000 each. I'm aware that math does not add up, but that is what they say. These awards will be split evenly across the program area and their priority topics. So they did warn us that higher scoring proposals may be passed over in favor of an equitable split across the area and topics. And finally, these grants are for a 5-year funding period, which is great because it allows the projects to be ambitious, and going from start to finish in 5 years is much more achievable than a one-year funding period. These are the priority topics for this grant. I'm not going to read all of them right now, but you can see they are pretty wide-ranging and comprehensive on their focus. And each grant application needs to tick off at least one of these boxes, but in situations like this, it's better to address more than one topic if possible, and have a wide-ranging application. So let me just back up here a second. With some initial coordination between Vince and Leah and the land bank, it was decided that the land bank would take the lead on trying to capture this funding for Nantucket. We don't want to have any competition between the town, land bank, or other local entities in applying for these big grants. So coordination is key. So once we had that sorted out, we identified the Lily Pond restoration as the project that we would put forward for this funding. And then, as you already know, we did end up collaborating with the Sewer and Stormwater Department. So a bit about our project. Lily Pond Park is in the downtown harbor watershed. You can see it there on the map to the left side of your screen, but it itself is a mini drainage area. You can see it drains from these 6 or 7 areas from the nearby residential neighborhoods. Water comes into the park and then leaves through one outlet towards Children's Beach, where it is put out into the harbor. This slide shows a little bit more detail of where the stormwater input pipes are into the park and how water flows through the park towards the one outlet. And you can see that it is, in fact, a semi-functional system. It does provide ecosystem services. It treats the runoff to some extent by removing a little over 40% of total suspended solids and removing some nitrogen before the water progresses out of the park. But things could be better. So this is the park as we know it now. I spend quite a lot of time here with my family. It's a great place to run around. But it hasn't always looked like this, as many of you are aware. Even in the relatively recent past, it's looked very different. These pictures are from the late 1800s, and you can see that we've had open water, there's been agriculture, there's been outbuildings. So to expect a fully functional wetland system here is maybe overambitious. And we do have some notable problems in the area. So a significant storm event will lead to on-street flooding, which is not great. Even a smaller rainstorm will give us flooding by the walking paths and boardwalks, which can impede access. There are invasive species in the park, notably knotweed and Phragmites. So with all of these issues in mind, the land bank began working with Horsley Witten Group a few years ago to produce a master plan for redesigning and restoring Lily Pond Park. So the final version of this was finalized in the late summer of 2021. So this was the project that we wanted to put forward for the SNEP grant. Here you can see the designs that Horsley Witten Group came up with to restore the park. And I'm going to talk about it in a few different zones or restoration areas. The first over here in the bottom corner is the North Liberty Street entrance. There will be constructed and restored wetlands here, stormwater treatment units to really catch some of the worst things coming through the stormwater into the park, improved parking and accessible access from that parking area to the boardwalk. So there will be an ADA accessible walking path down to the accessible boardwalk. In the middle, we have the central wetland restoration area and a very redesigned boardwalk rather than the kind of V shape that there is now. We have a loop system, big restoration of the central wetland. This will be the major habitat restoration area of the site. Then here we have the Lily Street entrance at Academy Hill. Lots of people walk through here on a daily basis. It's great access to the park. We'll be putting in a cascading bioswale to catch some of the things coming in through the stormwater. In this direction, another constructed wetland, and improving the walking access to this area. This is an ambitious area as well, the northeast entrance to the park. There will be a stream restoration, which involves removing the stormwater pipe, daylighting that water, restoring stream habitat, and again, fixing the access with a boardwalk in this area. For those who've walked through it recently, you know it can be quite soggy, so boardwalk will be a great addition in that area. So in phases, we know that the North Liberty Street entrance will be phase 1. This was the project that we submitted for the grant. The other phases to be determined what order they will be tackled in. Here is kind of a zoom in on the North Liberty Street entrance. These are 25% drawings. You can see that we have water quality treatments units planned for under the parking area. Lots of constructed wetland, lots of restored wetland, ADA path from parking to boardwalk, and treatments of invasives in this area. And down at the bottom of the screen, you can see the cross section of the grade. So a big change from the hill that's there now, really getting the people on the pathways and, you know, interspersing habitat among the paths. It's going to be really beautiful and functional. So speaking about functionality, this intends to treat the first 1 inch of water from any storm event. Water above that 1 inch will be diverted into the wetlands, but that first 1 inch will be treated to the maximum extent possible through the water quality units. This will be over 1.4 million gallons annually, and through modeling conducted by Horsley Witten Group, it's predicted that this one entrance project will remove over 47 pounds of nitrogen annually, 6.7 pounds of phosphorus, and many bacteria colonies will be removed. They have over 90,000 colonies in 100 mil of water will be removed. So basically uncountable amounts of bacterial colonies. So that's what's predicted will be the benefits from this work here. Keeping in mind that this is to benefit the habitat at Children's Beach, where the water is ultimately discharged. So improve recreation there, improve water quality for the eelgrass, which supports the commercial and the recreational shell fisheries, fin fisheries, and all of that. So while we know that outputs from Lily Pond and the surrounding residential areas are just one piece of the puzzle, if we can make an improvement there, hopefully the system can see some improvements as well. So I hope I have been able to briefly convince you that we are ticking 3 of these priority topics off for the SNEP grant application. We're addressing stormwater and roadway runoff at that North Liberty Street entrance. We're restoring the inland wetlands in Lily Pond Park. And as it is a park in the downtown area, it increases resilience in the urban area. And it, of course, is a habitat restoration project. So this is where our collaboration with the Sewer and Stormwater Department comes in. There was more that we could address in this list. So we, in conversation with Charles Johnson and David Gray in Sewer and Stormwater, they have this very ambitious project to look at the resiliency of the downtown harbor stormwater system. You know, and then we hope that by building on the master plan Lily Pond template, you know, we could really get this project kicked off. with a feasibility assessment of creating a more resilient stormwater system and a master plan for utilizing green infrastructure where possible, getting all of the players on the same page with property down in that area that can be utilized for stormwater treatment or green infrastructure, improving with the ultimate goal of improving the quality of the water going into the harbor for all those reasons that I discussed before, the eelgrass, the recreation, and the commercial and recreational shell fisheries. So I wasn't going to talk too much about that. I'm hoping that maybe Charles Johnson or David Gray can come on at some other point and talk to you more about their ideas for that project. But by incorporating that master plan feasibility exercise in with the grant, we now have ticked another box for municipal and tribal planning. So I think that we have a pretty strong grant application put together. This went in the end of June to SNEP, and we'll just be waiting to hear until the fall whether it was successful or not. Our other collaborators on the project, you are able to have as many partners as you want. So we brought in the Nantucket Land Council, especially because of their membership in the Waterkeeper Alliance. So they will be helping out with our water quality monitoring plans and executing them to see how exactly water quality will be improved from zero before we start the project to after it's finalized. They'll include the project in their public education and outreach efforts, similar to the Nantucket Shellfish Association, our other partner, who will work on educating their members and the community about the connections between stormwater drainage areas, harbor water quality, and shellfish habitat. And finally, here is our timeline, our proposed timeline for the grant project. You can see we have many things going on at one time between year 1 and year 5. The first year will be busy with the watershed feasibility assessment and master plan taking just over 1 year. Concurrently, we'll be bringing up the design specs for Lily Pond to the 75% level for permitting, and then sending everything out for bid before beginning construction in the 3rd year. And of course, planning our water quality monitoring and beginning that monitoring at least 1 year prior to construction and continuing 1 year after. We hope to be finished before the end of year 5, but there is a bit of a buffer there just in case. And then just to finish up, I will say a little bit about how we ran the grant application process. So for these big federal grants, there's quite an application, and we had a whole team working together on putting this together, different people taking on different parts of the writing, helping out with different sections, and then one person to pull it all together to make things consistent and get the narrative document in. I will say that for people considering doing these grants, it is very important to make sure that your accounts with the federal websites are up to date before beginning the process. So you have to be registered with sam.gov and grants.gov. All applications must go through there, and the verification process to become fully registered on them can take several weeks to several months. So that is something to keep in mind well before kind of the early summer grant season kicks off. But otherwise, that is it for my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, or we can leave it at that.
Thank you, Emily. I had one question, and then everyone else go ahead. And maybe I should know this, but where the pipe comes out at Children's Beach and goes into the harbor, can I assume that there's some sort of flapper valve so that we don't get a storm surge and then a charge of salt water that goes up, backs up into Lily Pond and burns everything, burns all the vegetation? Vince?
Emily can answer if she wants, but I know from having experience of having dealt with this, when it did malfunction, there was a non-return valve in place. It malfunctioned, I want to say about 2 years ago, allowed salt water back into the system. It was pretty quickly dealt with. Once the problem was identified, the problem was in place for several months, and then it got rectified and it's been checked on very regularly. So yes, there is a check valve, a non-return valve in place.
Okay. That's it for me. Committee members, let's see, I'll start with Doug Rose.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman, and thank you. Go ahead.
If you once you start talking, if you could then click that, take your hand down. Yep.
I'll learn the tricks here in a minute.
Okay.
First, thank you, Chairman, and Emily, just a great presentation. I was really wowed by that, and this is a big learning experience for me, just to kind of see what's going on here and what's involved in a grant application like this. I am curious, going back to the master plan that was put together by Horsley Witten, will this grant, if approved, take you beyond that phase 1 stage, or is that as far as it takes you?
So this grant will just be for that phase 1 project at the North Liberty Street entrance. The whole restoration of Lily Pond is above the $600,000 limit for the grant application, as you might imagine.
Well, it's very exciting, and also just great to see how the various teams within the town and the land bank are working together. It's very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Boyce.
Thank you. I'll lower my hand. Thank you, Emily, so much for your presentation. I echo a lot of what Doug said about this is the type of project that I'm really personally happy to see, where there's lots of partners working together cohesively. We've talked on this group a number of times about, like, this is kind of the wish list type of project. One question I had was, and you might have said this and I didn't get it, how much the grant your application was for. And then secondly, I was going to suggest that we write a letter of support, but then you said it was already submitted. So in the future, just for any other land bank projects or a project that land bank's involved in, I think I would love to see it presented to the board so we could write a letter of support.
Thank you, Sarah, very much for those comments. Interestingly, I'll address your second question first. The grant did not actually ask for letters of support in the application. There was no place to attach them in. So while we did get a few, we didn't kind of go out of our way to gather all the letters that probably would have come if we'd asked. And then can you remind me your first question again, please?
It was just what the total grant ask was for phase 1. More of a curiosity, because we've had so much discussion as this committee about the cost of projects, phasing them out, and success and that kind of thing. So I'm interested, I guess, in both the ask, what's going to happen if you don't get it? Are you still going to move forward? And some of the logistic pieces I think are interesting for this group.
Of course. So we put in for the full $600,000 amount. Approximately 75,000 of that is reserved for the master plan feasibility downtown watershed assessment piece of it. And then the rest of it goes towards, the construction, some of the planning, none of the permitting costs, none of the further design costs. Monitoring is included in that. And signage, if I mentioned that already. So, we have a well over 100% match commitment from the land bank in seeing even this first phase of the project through.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. Matt Fee.
No, I agree. It's a great project. It's great that you're doing it. I grew up in that area, crawled all around through all of those wetlands when I was a kid. One thing I don't think people think about is that is a storm tide pathway. It comes up the street past the Nantucket Hotel And then there's sort of a wetland that leads right into that park. So in your, which is kind of amazing. And I'm sure that along that road, a lot of that was infill. Like most of Brant Point was all infill, which is why you were having trouble with it already. What would, when you were doing it, the engineering, did they take that into consideration? Did they take into consideration that salt water may want to push up in there, and how do they deal with it?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Matt. We have some water level testing that we're taking right now that shows a very minor influence of the tide, but we can measure it and detect it. So like it's definitely there. As for this design taking into account that specifically, I'm sure it was done. I'm not aware of the specifics, but you know, we do know that there is tidal influence in the area, as you said, and it's about improving the quality of the water going out is probably one of the main goals, as well as improving the recreation in the park.
I guess a follow-up. We built a down in front of Sales, we did a swale and we did sort of a natural thing down there. My understanding is those have to be, every so many years, those have to be dug out and, you know, the dirt taken away and replanted again. Is that something that will have to happen here too? And I'm not sure we've done it in front of Sales. We may not have yet, but is that something that'll have to happen here?
More than likely, but we have, you know, commitment to the ongoing management and maintenance of the site. We have a great field property team that can take care of that, and a huge commitment on behalf of the staff to ensuring that the ecosystems are functioning to their highest extent.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have anything I want to say? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Emily, for your presentation. Thanks for taking the time today. Excellent presentation. We move on to a presentation by Vincent Murphy, Town of Nantucket Sustainability Programs Manager, on the beginnings on the coastal resilience districts as requested by the Select Board. And I assume you guys all saw it in your packet. Vince?
Thank you, Peter. Before I get to that, do you mind if I take a minute to deal with some minor technicals?
Sure.
Thank you, Peter. So for the start of this meeting, I was running the meeting. Your Coastal Resilience Coordinator, Leah Hill, is now here, Peter, so she is managing the meeting from now on. I want to say thanks to Gary for calling the meeting to order and getting some of the headaches out of the way to get this underway without a previous sitting chair. And a massive thanks to Mary, obviously, for all the work she's done over the last 4 years. Big congratulations to Peter, to Sarah, and to Doug on your new roles. And I'm sorry I didn't get to say this at the start, but we were trying to manage several things so that everybody's aware and understands. Doug Rose is the new at-large member. He has taken Mary's seat, and he is on his just beginning his 3-year term, and he has been at a lot of meetings of late. He's been watching the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee for some time, and just wanted to make sure that perhaps Peter at the end, if you wanted to give Doug and Tim a chance to introduce themselves, that might be an idea. And likewise, I'd like to welcome Tim Brain, the newly appointed member from the Coastal Resilience Advisory, from the Conservation Commission. And if you want to give Tim a chance to speak at the end to Peter, that's probably a nice thing to do. And given the years of service that both Mary and Ian Golding put onto the committee, it might be a nice gesture if somebody were to suggest a letter to both for thanks. That's my bit. Thanks, Peter. Sorry, Sarah's got her hand up, Peter, if you want to acknowledge her.
Dr. Boyce?
Thanks. I don't know if this is the appropriate time or later, but just because Vince introduced our new members, I didn't know if either through the chair or to the chair and Vince and Leah, if we have like a particular onboarding for new members, or if there's certain things that new members would like to know or to be apprised of. Obviously, we have a huge body of literature on the website and things, but I just wanted to put it out there that it might be something that we think about as a new committee, a relatively newer committee. Obviously, we've had some changeover of membership, but I just didn't know what the process was for that.
Peter, I can answer that if that's okay.
Okay, yes, definitely.
Sarah, yes, for every new member, I send them an email with all of the relevant documents and descriptions for each of them. And I say I'm here for any questions or to, run through anything as well.
Okay. Vince, you have the floor.
Thank you very kindly, Peter, and thank you for indulging me on that. I'm going to share my screens. So in the packet, I have a few documents included. And what I'm going to do, if nobody minds, I am going to skip the first sheet and I'm going to come back to that last. I'm going to lay down the groundwork for how we got to the coastal resilience districts. Committee members, and particularly Matt Fee, and I'm sorry to Matt in particular because he's seen most of this information, but good to get it as a recap. The Select Board and Conservation Commission had two joint meetings in March and April this year to understand the future for the Baxter Road area, come up with some collaborative ideas, and they did. This culminated in the presentation that went to the Select Board about 10 days ago. It gave an overview of how the meetings went, gave a summary. It talked about the future ideas for Baxter Road for protect, adapt, and retreat. There was rose, bud, and thorn ideas for each scenario that was discussed. And people had a lot of fun moving sticky notes around the place, going through scenario planning and coming up with timelines for how things might work, understanding funding, understand planning, and what agreements might need to be sought in various for various areas and in various timelines. This came out as this roadmap that is in your packet, and people can understand and read through. And the main point of what we're here to talk about today is understanding coastal resilience districts and how that might work. So just for definition and just to kind of give an overview of it, I'm sorry to read directly from slides, but it helps people once you hear it in words rather than read it sometimes. A coastal resilience district may be established in order to follow the principles adopted within the Town of Nantucket Coastal Resilience Plan and to provide organizational structure and funding for the purpose of protecting, adapting, or retreating the area from the threats of climate change, coastal flooding, sea level rise, and coastal erosion. So that is where we are. Essentially, that's kind of Arcadis's, I hasten to use the word definition, but their current wording of what a coastal resilience district. Then they described to the Select Board, because this was in the Select Board packet, how it works, the benefits of it, how betterments work, how assessments, fees work, and how the district might be structured. Just in kind of the 100,000 foot type level, and what the boundaries might be. The town could establish them as a legal authority to set the districts island-wide or similar geographic areas in the Coastal Resilience Plan. You might remember the areas in the Coastal Resilience Plan where there was North Shore, Harbour, South Shore, East Coast, and then Madaket and Tuckernuck were all in one district as well. That could be one way to do it. They also discussed how a schedule for getting a coastal resilience district might work and how it would work in terms of legal requirements. There are mentions of the geotubes in here, but the general idea is that a coastal resilience district model would not be just for Baxter Road. It would be island-wide. It would apply to every part of the island. Baxter Road and geotubes might be one of the models that goes forward in establishing some of the ground rules around it, for example, but it's just one way of looking at it. So now we're at the beginning point of putting forward how Coastal Resilience District might work. We have two different documents to briefly run over. I hope everybody read them, but I can summarize them very simply. There's a fact sheet on Coastal Resilience Districts that was developed by Town Council and Arcadis as well. So these are resources that were presented to the select board. The first thing to make everyone aware of is that we asked Town Council for some feedback on how we could go about establishing a coastal resilience or resiliency district or districts. Essentially, Vicky Marsh from KP Law took the question, looked at what frameworks are out there, what way it might be set up. She looked at some of the state requirements, how mass general law works, how special act legislation worked, and that is essentially a home rule petition. And then if we could do it through a municipal bylaw or a zoning bylaw or a general bylaw. Once she considered all these facts, she ended up recommending in this letter that the town pursue this most likely under the scenario of the special legislation, essentially a home rule petition to the state. On consideration of this, the select board, sorry, that's just at the end of that. I'll get to the select board in a second, I apologize. So when we looked at this fact, we decided to develop a fact sheet. Arcadis developed the questions and Vicky Marsh and Arcadis set about answering them to look at the purpose of a district. I have read this already or something similar to it. I can read this again just for clarity. The purpose of districts generally is to enable a municipality to be able to manage a particular issue in a particular geographical region of the municipality with defined boundaries. The districts can address different issues such as environmental questions, stormwater management, wastewater or roadway matters, as a few examples. In this case, the district is being established to address the effects of erosion on a certain degree, flooding, which results in the damage to homes, personal property, roadways, and utilities. The benefits to the town are listed in here, but essentially this finds a way of funding it. We can talk about betterments and how betterments work, and it might be advisable for somebody from KP Law to come and talk about that. Essentially, the way that betterments work is that if you have a benefit from a town development in your area, such as providing you access, sewer, water, etc., then we can assess betterments against property over a period of time, usually 20 years, or it can be less. But it's a very worthwhile model to look at. There's other parts in here, but the benefits of the district to provide a clarity onto the residents that are located in the geographical boundary of the district, rather than wondering who will receive any special any services by the town and from the effects of erosion. So that is clearly describing the situation on Baxter Road, but this could be applied island-wide. And that is the recommendation that has come out in this, is that we use this island-wide. Now, I would like, and this again goes through the steps of how we get to it, using essentially, first of all, seeking input from this committee, then look at how geographical boundaries may or may not be defined and implemented. The town would then put together the home rule petition. We probably have to have this largely completed by December or thereabouts of this year, and then it would have to go to town meeting, and then we'd have to understand the set fees and betterment structure. Now, if nobody minds, and hopefully people have read this, I'm going to skip up to the very top to the first sheet, which is essentially my concise wording of the request from the select board. So the select board by consensus requested input from the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee on developing the guidance for the coastal resilience districts. We're going to use CRDs if nobody minds a good acronym. I do like a TLA, a 3-letter acronym. CRDs are map districts in coastal areas where projects that aid in the retreat, protection, or adaptation of the mapped area to be developed. This is a way of apportioning costs. The select board would like feedback by September 1st. This is my proposal, that I am now introducing this topic at this meeting today, and we can get initial reactions. At the next meeting on June 8th, that there can be discussion from the committee to collect more thorough feedback that once people have had a few weeks to consider it. And then hopefully we can draft something for the June 22nd meeting that the committee can discuss and provide to the select board for that September 1st feedback. I have covered the background on this and how it's going to work and the legal opinion, how home rule petition might be the way to create this. And one of the things that we need to understand is what exactly is the request and how the select board might like it structured. Bullet point guidance or succinct recommendation on coastal resilience districts. This will be used to guide the draft document for the home rule petition, and that guidance will be used by staff, consultants, and legal counsel who will undertake the drafting. But that's only the drafting, and then it's going to go before many other committees and everything. Probably again, I'm imagining from this committee right through to FinCom for a recommendation. Should it make it as far as town meeting for next May? I put in some possible talking points on some guidance to help the committee, and we can go through these as needed. But I was looking at things along the lines of how do you define and map the district? Is the whole island the district, or do we map specific area or specific benefit sub-districts that are mapped on a needs basis? Is inclusion based on direct benefits? What about indirect benefits? Should this include people who may benefit in the future as sea level rises? We want guidance on benefits, whether it's 100% benefit, 100% on beneficiaries or a percentage on the town. This is what I put in, knowing some of the problems that we've dealt with on Baxter Road, problems with operation and maintenance. We need to have some funding mechanism so that operation and maintenance can also happen through coastal resilience districts, not just the main construction part of the project. We need to understand the easements of utilities for town water and sewer, but also the licenses that the town provides to different companies for electric and telecommunications, meaning phone, internet, and cable. This is especially for MAP fee for the hold harmless clause, and I want hopefully some feedback on the committee on that one in particular. We need to define the coastal area potentially, or the risk area, and to some extent who may not benefit. That would be another good thing to understand from the committee once we start to move forward with this. And the differences are the same, differences or same benefits in flood zones as well as erosion zones. So how do you treat flood zones and erosion zones the same or differently? And this is a personal one, to include sea level rise so that the districts can migrate as waters rise. That's something that I put in, and I'm not going to stop talking about sea level rise ever probably. And is this done by periodic review, or is it set in line with some parameter that this committee or some other group may like to define? I'm going to leave it there for now. I'm going to stop sharing, Peter, but by all means, if people want to see information as presented, I can absolutely bring it back up on screen.
Thanks, Vince. I wanted to stress one thing. I'm sure everybody knows this, but just to make sure we do understand, if we're doing a home rule petition, that's an article at town meeting. It requires a 2/3 majority vote. That means we all have to do a great job of convincing the public, convincing our voters that this is what we need to do. So it's not just a simple vote. Anyway, I'll take hands for who wants to talk, and I see Matt Fee first. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, a couple of things. Thank you, Vince. A couple of things. One of the comments we made at this, or I made at the select board, was I think going for a home rule petition will take too long. I think it will. I think we should be looking at how can we use betterments, and how can we put that in place through betterments and through regulation first, because I think the home rule could take 2, 3, 5 years. There could be a strong lobby from from real estate agents, et cetera, off island, from building, that if they feel like this type of thing is going to harm their business, harm their ability to operate, we could be held up as we've been on other things. So I think we should be looking at betterments and what else could we do here first as a step to it. I don't think we should be focusing on everything right now because there's no way we know everything. I think we can't be thinking about the whole island. We should be thinking about this one district which is subject to erosion, and we should be looking at this one area subject to erosion. I think we should be charging the people who are closest the most and further away less. And I think districts will be different between flooding or erosion. I can picture down at Brant Point there being a district right up to the Cliff Road Bluff. I could see that right up to the cliff. Everyone is going to be included because they're going to be facing sea level rise and they're going to be facing rising water table. And so in that case, I think some of these districts, when we look at them, will define themselves. When you start thinking about what the problem will be, I think the district itself will define itself, based on what the problem is. And I had one other point. I'll come back to it. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Matt. Carl?
Yeah, I just thought that I'm taking away from this is the basic gist. Vince and Matt have touched on this. Me being a property owner in the Hummock Pond watershed area off Hummock Pond Road, do I have to pay for the coastal resilience districts through betterments and fees, or is it going to be set up for the areas that are on the coast and downtown on the harbor? It wasn't too clear to me how fees and betterments are going to be assessed. What I may have missed it, and I apologize if I missed it during your presentation, Vince, but if I'm located in the Hummock Pond area, right in the middle of the island, away from the coast, why do I have to pay for coastal resilience projects? I don't mind, but how are you going to sell it to voters next year who don't live on the coast of the island? And, there's always, there's a lot of money going to need to be raised for these projects. So I don't mind paying, but other people might mind paying for the coast if they're not living on the coast. I think it's a good idea, though. I think it's a very smart thing to do. And I would agree with Matt that the home rule may take too long. I mean, it's a minimum of 15 months up in Boston, and it's susceptible to lobbying by groups, special interest groups. However, that being said, I kind of at a loss as another way to do it. If the lawyer recommended it, it's probably the best way. But anyway, I'm just concerned about paying for these structures and solutions being a resident who lives in the middle of the island.
I'm going to take a stab at answering Vince's question for him, but maybe he can tell me that I'm wrong. But I believe by creating a district, the betterments are assessed on the people who live in the district. So if we're going to create a district of Baxter Road and Sconset, then that betterment, those people will pay that money and you won't because you don't live there. Maybe there'll be a need for where you live. You never know. I mean, Hummock Pond is a storm pathway. Eventually the ocean's going to come up high enough where the littoral drift coming down from east to west on the South Shore won't be able to keep up. And water will come right into Hummock Pond, and the island maybe eventually could be segmented in sections by our outwash ponds. So people who live in those areas who thought that they were higher maybe won't be, and maybe that would affect you. But I think I'm correct that a betterment is for a specific area. Is that right, Vince?
Absolutely right. And the key word is mapped area. So you know exactly if your house is in or out. And it's generally done by lot lines. So if your entire property's in or your entire property's out, for the sake of argument.
Sure.
I like Peter's point as well. And this is one that I wanted to try and include. And yes, I am on my bandwagon. Future flood zones and making sure that people, we have the ability, I don't know, through a home rule petition, through the legal wording, that we have the ability to reborder these areas over time. and some mechanism to adjust them as sea level rises to exactly get to Peter's point. But yes, generally speaking, they're mapped areas. You know exactly if you're in or not. And if you're in, you're going to be assessed betterments. And we don't know to what percentage, because as Matt said, it depends if you're closer to the risk factor or further from the risk factor. We don't know how that's going to work. And as the committee feedback on those points is what I'd like, please.
I just want to follow up really quickly. I see a number of hands up on the screen. I talked to Dave Franzuto years ago about FEMA flood maps. And to your point, Peter, that's true. Floodwaters can come in a category 3 to 5 hurricane and flood my swamp, Larrabee Swamp, and get close to one of my buildings and my property. So that's already on the books about 10 years ago, what those flood maps were set up at that time. And they could be different now. They could be showing more flooding in my swamp close to my house. But you're right. I mean, Maya Comet, Hummock Pond, they can all flood in storm events, and sea level rise is going to affect that. So this could change in the next 20 to 30 years. I might be in a coastal resilience zone. Thank you.
Peter,
Carl, Dr. Boyce.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, so I have a few thoughts. One is thank you, Vince, for the presentation. It really helped. I mean, I read ahead of time, but it helped kind of solidify what we're being asked to do, which I really appreciate. And I think one thing I really appreciate is in that first page of the document when you said specifically that it's like bullet point guidance from this group. So succinct recommendations. So I think sometimes we spend so much time on our recommendations for various things because we're worried about the parsing out of language. But I think knowing that there's staff consultants and the legal counsel are going to be actually drafting something that has teeth, that puts, okay, this group, what do we already know? What have we already been working on? And what's in the coastal resiliency plan? That makes the ask like easier, right? We're using what we have. Just to start the conversation today, I do think that we should do something. I think one of your thoughts was island wide, but then having specific smaller parts. So to like piece out that betterment piece because of my thought originally was exactly what Carl said. If you're in the middle of the island, like where my house is, you're not necessarily subject to sea level rise, but all the roads we drive are the way we get on and off the island, blah, blah, blah. So I think you don't know in the near future what the project is going to be that you might actually be part of that is going to require a betterment. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was, we're specifically mentioning over and over again sea level rise, but it's a coastal resiliency district. And so the threats or the vulnerability pieces are not just erosion and sea level rise, it's the storm surge pieces too. It's the infrastructure, whatever. There's like so many different things. Obviously sea level rise is kind of the main one, but I think if we only focus on that, then when we're thinking about where the districts should be or what our recommendations might be, we're only going to be focused on those coastal pieces. And exactly the point that Carl just made about, or Pete just made about the ponds flooding. So anyway, those were just thoughts to be thinking about as we move forward with this discussion.
Thanks, Sarah. Tim Brain.
You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm a rookie. Do you anticipate, Vince, that there will be management and administrative personnel and expense additional to keep track of these districts?
Peter, Mayor.
Yeah, Vince, go ahead.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, so good question, and honestly don't know yet. This could be the kind of thing that kind of gets decided by a committee to, I don't know, set up or map out a new district and have people understand the risks of each individual property to who's in and who's out. It could be the kind of thing that would fall to Leah and I to come up with some kind of base map and to then take to some outside group to understand the risks to each property, a consultant of sorts, and then perhaps have to go through planning and the planning department, the plus, I beg your pardon, to make sure that it's all acceptable there, and then probably be signed off on by the select board. I can imagine, and I'm really only imagining, that there will be several tiers to how these get finally accepted, but we're honestly far too early to understand how places are going to get mapped in and out, other than to say that it'll be to deal with known risks and possibly, if this committee makes a recommendation, future risks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Thanks, Tim. Doug Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of real quick thoughts, almost in a brainstorming mindset here. Vince was asking, would there be alternatives to some kind of a physical map to lay out these districts? And one thought occurred to me, which is that perhaps instead of carving out the island into geographic groups, we could instead identify areas based on the primary threat. So if it's a flood zone, if it's an erosion zone, if it's a storm surge vulnerability, water table rise, wind damage, I don't know, you could come up with any number of maybe color coding ways of approaching this. It could also add complexity. So I'm not suggesting that's a better idea. I'm just suggesting it could be an alternative. I think the root issue that we're going to have to wrestle with, and I think Matt kind of spoke about this, was determining to what degree people that are not in that immediate geographic area either benefit or don't benefit. And so as an extreme example, if we're investing in the development of harbor resilience, should that fall on the residents of the harbor area alone? And the obvious answer would be, of course not, because the harbor is essential to every resident of Nantucket. So that would be, to me, one of the examples of a resilience initiative that's going to be needs to be funded by the entire island, perhaps equally. Whereas contrast that with, to me, the extreme example would be Baxter Road, or maybe there's another better example somewhere else, where it's easier to identify the immediacy of the benefit based on your geographic location on the island. So maybe stating the obvious, but I just think that's something worth calling out. And I think it was addressed in the CRP. I think we, the CRAC as a group, rightly identified that things that will benefit the entire island should be of top priority when thinking about the 40-some projects on the list. The last thing I would just throw out there, and again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because this could be part of the process of discussion next time, was I want to be confident that there won't be an unintended consequence of initiating coastal resilience districts that are in some way used to undermine the regulatory authority that's going to be overseeing any of these initiatives. So as an example, I think CONCOM needs to be regarded as the ultimate regulatory authority on issues that relate to their bailiwick, right? As opposed to, well, we got it funded through the CRD, so CONCOM just needs to kind of step back and we're going to move ahead. Maybe again, statement of the obvious, but I think the history would show that we need to make sure none of this goes forward in a way that leads to any erosion of, pardon the pun, erosion of the authority of regulatory commissions. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Matt Fee.
Yeah, I was gonna say something similar to what Doug just said about the steamship in downtown is clearly everybody, in Sheep's Pond area is Sheep's Pond, and there's 5 or 6 houses. That's a easy, good one to think about. Mattocket is Mattocket, and that's going to be what it's going to be. And so I think, some of the roadways, what we did with sewer is we split it up. It was, some people wanted to do the whole sewer on the tax base, which would have raised everybody's taxes, and it wasn't really fair. We ended up splitting it a third on existing, a third on tax base, and a third on future. And that has worked out pretty well, but that was kind of an island-wide thing. This will be, I think, more of a betterment by area, by what happens. I'm going to talk about the hold harmless aspect. part of what happens when we have to do this from the town side is you go to an area and some people want to do it, some people don't want to do it, some people want to pay, some don't. You end up having to do takings, and then people are threatening lawsuits. There's all sorts of stuff that you get into, and it's not, you know, tens or thousands of dollars. It can be millions of dollars. And so, you know, sort of one of my biggest things, you know, with Baxter Road and with some of these going forward is a hold harmless. And that sounds easy, like it's a hold harmless. What's the big deal? It's basically having people sign away that they won't sue, and that if we're going to do this, we have to get X amount of signatures from an area, or maybe we don't even bother. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm a little jaded from what's happened over so many years, but I think there has to be, you know, we're doing something that's really going to benefit the people that are there, and they, you know, and it should be something that they're willingly want to do and that they're excited about and they take part in. But at the same time, the town shouldn't be, you know, shouldn't be in litigation and shouldn't be having to do all sorts of unfriendly takings in order to do something that's for the benefit of that area. If they want to let their area, you know, sort of just, if they don't want this, that's their choice. So I don't know how we're going to do that. I'm being a little sort of direct about it, but I think that there has to be, you know, and there's other things that we've asked of Baxter Road, and they've done, or they have planned to do. They've done one big beach easements. They've agreed to public access even on their property. They've, you know, there's certain things that if and when we do it out there, I think we're going to learn a lot. I think there'll be things, you know, I think that we'll over time, I think we're going to find there's going to be donations. People are going to donate their property prior when it's at a high value. They're going to donate it to the land bank or to the, you know, conservation or something, and they're going to get a donation. They're going to live in it for a certain amount of time before they retreat. There are going to be things that are going to be really positive that will happen, but we have to just get started on it. And we can't be afraid of sort of the, you know, about sort of the polarization of it. I think, you know, I think some of this is going to be a very positive.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Gary Beller.
Thanks, Peter. I just have a couple of comments. I agree with Matt about his concern. When you go for, and also Carl said the same thing, when you go for a home rule petition, it takes a really long time. And it just seems like we need to move more quickly, and then depending upon the approval of these home rule petitions, takes time to get to the annual town meeting. And then after, if it does get approved, then the whole process of approval. So that concerns me. The district sounds like an interesting idea. One of the questions I have is, will the fact that we create these districts, these CRDs, will that somehow enable additional funding from some sources? If it did, that's a positive. If it doesn't really provide some additional enabling of funding, I'm not sure what the benefit is. And my third comment is that from what I understand is the town of Nantucket has already exercised the process of betterments. And I know Matt was talking about the sewer system. Maybe that's a good idea, a good example to use. So when we had to do the betterments, did we have to go to a home rule petition? Or did we just figure out that when we're going to spend the town's money to improve the sewer system for a whole bunch of people, that the betterments will have to be required? I don't know how that was done and whether or not we had to do a home rule petition. If not, then we should be thinking about betterments for whether it's Wisconsin or any other place. That's all my comments.
Okay, Gary, thanks. Matt, do you want to respond to Gary?
Yeah, I think I can a little bit. We did go do a whole home rule on the sewer, and we did get specific powers that were different than the state. Betterments are very, what's the word? Specific. There's a certain way you can do it. There's a couple ways you can charge it. You have to know how much you're going to charge ahead of time. So it would be difficult to be as nimble as we someday want these to be. But as a starting point, I think they may work. I'm not sure that there'll be extra money available just because we form them, although there might be, if they're seen as you're being proactive, et cetera, there might be. But how I look at it is there will be extra money if Baxter Road picks up the tab for, 80% of that area, let's pretend. I don't know what it'll be. They pay 80 or 100. They were willing to pay 100. I don't think they are anymore, but let's pretend they pick up 80 or 90%. That means that that's less money that we as a town have had to put on the taxpayer, which means that we might be able to get other areas done. And so I look at it as if we share in certain areas, we share that, then that does mean our tax dollars are going to go further in others. So it's not exactly a new pot of money, but it's enabling to stretch what we have.
Thanks, Matt. Vince, do you have something you want to add?
Yep, Matt is exactly right in what he's saying about betterments. They're a bit too limiting. So betterments are meant to say they're essentially for one and done type projects. So say sewer, that's essentially one and done, requires next to no maintenance. It goes off to the sewer department and they perform whatever maintenance is required once the infrastructure is in the ground. So that was a plan to get just the infrastructure in the ground. But we've seen from Baxter Road that operation and maintenance being the key word, that killed the project. That kills the geotube project effectively. So one thing that betterments don't do is collect additional funds along the way for betterments. They're only for one and done, for operation and maintenance. They're only for the one and done type projects. Plus, we need to be able to potentially redraw the districts over time. I don't know, we can do some amount of resilience planning to try and stop erosion and have lower erosion rates in an area. But we're never going to stop erosion permanently. Everyone's acknowledged that. It's like temporary processes of sorts. So once we lose homes, how to then count them out of a district, and as say erosion continues inland, how do we count them in for whatever other benefits that they might receive over time? And I don't mean to go back to Doug's comment from much earlier, but this is kind of a very bespoke way of dealing with it. I like Doug's idea about what if you just had erosion districts and then a flooding district. But my fear, and it's only my fear, would be it would be quite unequal and quite unfair in some ways, where say some places like Baxter Road, they have erosion around about a foot a year. But it's not all at the same time. And then they get these great big episodic events every 20-25 years where they lose 20-25 feet. Versus places like Madikit, where they lose 11 feet per year, but they are constantly losing ground out there. How would you equally divide that? And you could say the same for flood zones as well. What if your house only very occasionally floods and then you only get like a couple of inches or a foot of water in your house, versus say someone on Easton Street who hasn't raised their home and gets 8 feet of flood water in their house or in their basement and the first few feet of their living space. But how do you parse that out if you go down that road? It's I'd prefer, from my point of view, to see kind of smaller-ish districts dealing with bespoke problems and the bespoke costs for the people in that area. And then whatever the division is between the town and the residents in that district. And I have to say, I was thrilled when Matt mentioned what happened for sewer, about how it was a third for existing, a third for the town, and a third for the future people that come into that area. But that's just a nice model. We don't actually know the percentages, and some very rough guidance on that would be appreciated from the committee, I'm sure.
I want to throw in 2 cents, and the smaller districts sounds like maybe that's where we go, but also you have to think about all of the aspects of the island that we all use. And so if there's a way that we make a whole separate district out of the whole island, and then there's a lower betterment that everybody pays because we all use these things, maybe that's something to consider. I see another hand. Rachel Freeman.
Thanks, Peter. I really appreciate this discussion today. I think it's very interesting, and everyone's had great things to say. I wanted to play devil's advocate for 1 second. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with this statement, but I just wanted to put it out there. One thing I'm seeing is, or one thing I'm wanting is more general buy-in. And I'm wondering if going the home rule petition route and letting that extra time elapse isn't necessarily a bad thing, in lieu of sort of forcing people's hands. You know, I still see a lot of sentiment that, you know, we really don't need to be doing this now or yet, or you know, all these pieces that kind of haven't fallen into place yet. And I'm wondering if the 15-month process will just let things evolve a little bit more, and to a point where we will be able to get buy-in. And maybe I'm dreaming that that's a possibility, but I would like to see a little bit more of a cultural shift. So there's my devil's advocate for the day. Thank you.
Okay. I will remind us that we do have to August 8th to think about all this and bring our more refined thoughts to the next meeting. And then, of course, we have to the 22nd to get that down on paper. And then at that meeting, we'll refine that. So we don't have to solve it all right now. So all great comments from everybody. Is there any? Oh, okay. Joanna, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Peter.
Go ahead.
I also thought this conversation has been productive. And I have two things. One, Peter, I think I agree with you in terms of making this be island-wide, because I think that in terms of also what Rachel is saying about general buy-in, if we chop up parts of the island and give them more attention, I'm not sure you ever could really get everybody's buy-in, because some people are going to, I think, inherently feel like they have carry a higher load than other people. But I like the idea of having the whole island be a coastal resiliency district and having whatever betterments build across the whole island. I also like the idea, based on what Rachel was saying, is that I am concerned about the buy-in as well. And I think her take on the feedback that, you know, we get when we talk to anybody about the coastal resiliency plan is, one, that people may have paid attention when this was all going on, and they may have read parts of the coastal resiliency plan, but the overall knowledge of any general island person about the work that we do or the priorities that were in the plan is really not well established, let's say. So I guess one of the things I would ask the group is there a way for us to, and this is something that has come up before, but I think it needs to be discussed again. How are we handling community outreach and education? And we can't just not say anything. Is there a newsletter? Is there, you know, a monthly forum? Is there a way for us to keep this topic top of mind and share with the public the things that we're discussing, the things that we're learning, the steps that we know are coming into the future? Because there's a disconnect between the conversations that we have here in this forum and what's happening out in the community. People don't really recognize, one, the importance of the work, two, how expensive it is, and three, the timeline. So how can we as a group influence this awareness? That's my question.
Thanks, Joanna. Vince, you want to answer that?
Sure, unless you want to go to Leah first, who also had her hand up.
Yeah, okay. Leah?
Sure. Joanna, I can help answer that. So I will first say that we are not great at education and outreach here in the natural resources, but we try. So we have many social media outlets where Thursdays are my Coastal Resilience Day to post. And then we also send information to the town administrator, town manager's newsletter, which goes out every month. And I forgot how many followers she has for that, but I'm open to any suggestions how the natural resources can help put the word out. And if there's any, pictures or materials, you can email that to me and I can post it on our social media as well.
Vince?
Yep. 100% right. Thank you, Leah. And the only minor thing to add to it is the town has a new communications office set up as part of town administration. There's not one, but two people working in the communications office now, pumping stuff out, and they're constantly trying to look for new material. They're trying to hit a lot of different topics. We have to bear that in mind. They're trying to hit everything from sewer, DPW, airport, you name it, every town department. And they're once we supply them with something, or we post something on one of our social media accounts, they repost it, they send it out and try and get it out to the broader audience. So that's another new tool that literally only got established within the last short number of months, about 2 to 3 months.
So Vince and Leah, I'm wondering if maybe we add a fourth position to this committee, and that's a person who's in charge of public media, public information, and reports on the meetings, puts the link up for the YouTube and tells people what's going on. I mean, you just have to look at what's happening. I don't know, the Natural Resources Department, the hatchery does a great job reporting on what's going on there, and I look forward to seeing those posts. If we had something like that, every time we had something to say, then it'd be out there. Anyway, that's something to think about. So
if you don't mind, Peter.
Go ahead, Vince.
Thank you. This is getting to exactly what Joanna is talking about. And I feel Leah's pain in some of this. When you're talking about the hatchery, you're talking about literally the symbol of the island. They get to put up lovely pictures of scallops, literally a keystone species, something that is a great touch point for everyone in the community. We're talking about woe and doom and gloom.
Yeah,
it's harder to get the buy-in on that. That's what I've learned from the two sides of the Natural Resources Department about how to try and get the feedback, the information out there. It is tough because we're trying to present a problem and trying to show that we have a solution in the CRP. And it's a 248 page dense document with supporting materials. And Joanna's hit this point before. It's not consumable by the normal everyday guy who just wants to know, what should I do?
point taken. Okay, so if I see no hands up. It's 11:39. I did not come to this meeting knowing that I would be chairman once it got going. So I have commitment that continues from 12 o'clock on. So I'm sure we all don't want to be here any longer than we have to be. So I would move us on to review and discuss second quarterly Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee report to Select Board.
Okay, I saw Doug had his hand up. Do you want to speak before I go into the report? Or you're on mute?
You're on mute, Doug.
Sorry, I'll get the hang of this. I just wanted to let everybody know, since I am now secretary, I am taking notes. I will do my best to get the minutes out to everybody. And I could use maybe Leah, your help in making sure I haven't overlooked anything, but otherwise that was it. Thanks.
And Doug, what really helps is to go back to the YouTube video and watch it and go through it. So
yes, understood.
Okay.
Sorry, I was taking notes too because I thought I was still secretary for today. So I have notes too. Maybe we can compare notes later or whatever works for you, Doug.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Leah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I took a stab at the second quarterly report, and I'm hoping that it can get approved at this meeting, so then it can then be able to be presented at the Select Board's August 2nd meeting. So that is my proposition here. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me. Okay, so just the introductory page. The first page here are highlights. So, Mary was the chair for 4 years. It goes into a couple of the major accomplishments that the committee accomplished during those 4 years. My question is, in the packet, there was a letter written from Mary with her reflections. And so as the committee, would you like me to read that reflection during the presentation to the select board? Or do you want to just keep it in as, you know, these couple accomplishments, bullet points? It's something you can think about, and at the end of the presentation, we can discuss that. And then it just says that, you know, Peter and I facilitated the Coastal Resilience Table at the Harbor Plans Public Forum, and you all wrote a support letter for the CZM's Coastal Resilience Grant. If there are any other, you know, big highlights that you want to include, please let me know. You can either, well, you should probably say it here at the meeting instead of emailing me separately. Okay, the next page is just about the site visit to Sconset and how Jeff led the visit. You all saw, or whoever was there saw the current physical conditions from the ground level view from Codfish Park, pretty much to St. Kitty Lighthouse. You learned about the landscape, the coastal engineering structures, which forces are a significant threat at each location, and if the beach in that location was either accreting or eroding. And then I put the link for the video that Morgan Sale made. And that video is now on the CRAC website as well. Next is the best next steps for Sconset Bluff. So this just touches on the letter that you all wrote to tell the select board your opinion about the next best steps, and that the site visit helped you kind of formulate those opinions. And then the next is the presentation that we had from Arnold Robinson about the market on Metacon, and, you know, basically what that project was, and then the website. It was hard to find actual pictures for that presentation, so that's why it's kind of, this page is sort of wordy. Next one was the zoning bylaw review tool that Carl introduced us to, and then I just took a screenshot of an example of that tool, and that Carl had recommended that class explores the tool in more depth, and a website where it can be accessed and where there's webinars and trainings for it as well. Then there was a discussion on finance and policy topics. I looked back at the video, there wasn't a huge discussion on it. It was kind of like you all were saying that we do need to discuss these topics more, and that we need to figure out how we're paying for, you know, all the recommendations, which cost upward of $900 million. And I'm not sure why my computer isn't working. Okay, there we go. And then we had the presentation by Rachel about the articles 102 and 103 for 31 Easy Street and the potential expansion of Easy Street Park. And then requests and recommendations from CRAC. So the first was mentioned in one of the meetings for the town to hire a dedicated grant writer. And then another was to include the coastal resilience in the select board strategic plan. And this is pretty good timing because in September or October, they do a 2 or 3 day retreat where they go and talk about their strategic plan. So it'd be nice to offer that up before that, and then obviously asking them what else they would like the committee to work on or give advice about. And that is it. Okay. So are there any comments, suggestions, edits for this presentation? I don't see anything.
Okay, Doug, I see Doug Rose has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Leah, my reaction to your question about whether to include Mary's letter, I thought it was really well done, and I'm sure the select board members have read it, but I don't know if the audience to the select board has necessarily heard it being spoken. So I would be in favor of including it if time permits. Thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions? If there aren't, I would take a motion to approve the quarterly report.
I
As-
move to do so, Peter.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second,
Okay. By roll call vote. And I'm just going to run down what I'm looking at here on the right. So Carl Borchardt,
Approve.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
I'm going to abstain. I don't know enough about it. Thank you.
okay, Dr. Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Doug Rose,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. All set to go, Leah. Okay, we're now at public comment. Are there any members of the public that wish to comment on the proceedings so far? Seeing none. Matt, did you want to say something?
yeah, just a couple ideas to plant, couple seeds to plant with the group. The first one, I haven't done any myself. I'm not sure if Leah or Vince have, but can we learn from other coastal resiliency districts? Have other places done it? And what has their experience been? That would be number one. Has anyone looked up that to see what is out there? And then the other one is one of the things that we keep talking about and not getting to is sort of capital planning and how are we going to pay for this? And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do it on this in this format with this committee. So one of the thoughts that I and others have had is, should we form a capital resiliency capital planning, like a subcommittee, and put some people that sort of know the ins and outs of sort of the town, how it works, how we've done other fundings before, and have them come back to us or come with sort of some suggestions. Because I think if we don't, I think we're going, we should be getting stuff in front of the capital committee this year. And, if we want to be considered, that has to happen. And so, but I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do it the way we've been operating every 2 weeks. And we have a presentation, and when do we ever get into the weeds on it? So that would be something for us to discuss at a future meeting, is do we have a subcommittee and how would we do it on capital? And if you want me to bring some ideas or bring a suggestion, I might be able to do that too. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Joanna?
I support that idea 100% because we are about to get into budget season. As much as that seems early, it's not. And Matt's 100% right. If we don't put projects in front of the capital campaign committee or in front of the department heads who can request funds, then we will have missed the boat this year.
Thanks, Joanna. Vince?
If I can just get to Matt's first question about the coastal resilience districts and what other places have done. In the state, we would be the first if we got it. Simple as that. Casting the net wider, we're looking to other states and what other places have done, and that's where we are now, trying to figure that out. But it is a first for Massachusetts.
I would think maybe North Carolina, maybe New Jersey. Some of those places have been at it a little longer than us, but who knows? Maybe not.
Well, when you look at them around, I hate to get conversation and through Peter, obviously. Yes, but they've called it different things. They've had very different functions. They haven't gone down the betterment route because they didn't have anything like that in their state. So finding something directly comparable is tough, to be honest, Matt. But yeah, they're out there.
Okay. Okay. New business committees, natural resources department reports from planning board, conservation commission, harbor and shellfish advisory board, select board advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers, and other committee members. Okay, I see this item here, Vincent. And Leah, town submitted CZM grant for the feasibility study and design for flood barrier in the Nantucket Historic Downtown Gateway. What is this? Or
Yep, if I can, Leah, after you.
Okay, so that is the grant that I submitted on July 11th, and that's what CRAC wrote a support letter for. So it's
Okay.
the project basically looking at Easy Street Basin and the road and getting 3 alternatives for it, choosing one, and it would be a 30% design. And then we could take that and get more funding and be able to, get it to hopefully 100% design and construction. And we should find out, I believe, in September or early October if we get awarded that.
awesome. Okay. Discussion of upcoming meeting dates and topics. The next meeting is August 8th, 2023. Is there any discussion on that? Nope. Okay. It was suggested by Vince that we have Mr. Brain and Mr. Rose introduce themselves. So, Mr. Rose, why don't you go ahead?
Actually, thanks, Chair. I was gonna suggest that perhaps each of us give some thought to, if you could boil down into just a few bullet points, your own thoughts about what we should be considering for this CRD initiative, so that we don't just come to the next meeting flat-footed. We come with something to offer, and hopefully there'll be a lot of repetition. You'll hear several people saying the same kind of thing. That would be a good sign to me. So that would just be a suggestion. I forgot, what am I supposed to say? Oh, about myself. I think I already introduced myself. Mary asked me to introduce myself a few meetings ago. For those that I've not yet met. Tim, I don't know you. I've never met you in person. I haven't met many of you in person, so I look forward to that someday. I'm just really excited to be here. I was very saddened by the fact that my inaugural meeting, we didn't have a quorum. Made me very sad. But I'm glad that we have a quorum today. It's been a really interesting meeting for me. I have been watching CRAC meetings off and on for the last 3 or 4 years. And as I said before, it's been a really great educational experience for me just to kind of learn more about what the future of the island looks like, and be able to share some thoughts that I've had of my own. Going forward, I just would like to lend whatever value I can as secretary. I'm excited about that. I will do my best to provide timely minutes, and I'll learn my way to do that as I go. I guess I should just say I'm a seasonal resident. I live in town. Have been a homeowner here for a little over 10 years. Prior to that, my wife and I and our family vacationed here for 15 years, something like that. So I feel like I know Nantucket quite well, although I've not been here quite as long as many of you. And that's a little bit about me. Thank you. I'm retired, by the way. I'm a marketing guy, marketing communications, data analytics. But the reason I'm excited to be on this team is because I do have some spare time now because I'm retired. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Doug. Tim?
Yeah, I'll try and be brief. I've been, in terms of my origin story with Nantucket, I've been coming here since the 1950s. Used to stay with my great aunt in Quidnet, my sister and I did. Had, fantastic time. Came back with my wife and our first kid about 30 years ago. And fortunately, my wife fell in love with it too. And we've been coming here since the mid-90s for summers, and we're now full-time residents. I just am impressed with Nantucket and how engaged people are in the business of the island. I think I'm impressed with the government. I'm impressed in particular with this committee. I'm fascinated with the problem of sea level rise. I don't know why, but that's why I started watching your meetings a couple years ago. And I didn't expect to be on this. I got on Concom, and then Ian asked me if I wanted to do this. And the truth is, I really wanted to do this, not Concom, but I'm doing both. And so I'm really happy to be here, and I'm impressed with the work you guys have done. And I hope I can make a decent contribution. So.
Great, thanks, Tim.
But
Dr. Boyce.
Thanks. I just wanted to apologize for Doug for not being at the last meeting, and we didn't have a quorum. We couldn't say anything at the time, but now there's been a press release. So there was the southern pine beetle infestation, and the state came down that day. So a lot of us had to go to that. So I feel badly because we couldn't say it on the public meeting why we weren't there, but it was suddenly we're like, bye, we're gone, So I apologize for not being at the first meeting.
Okay. There was a suggestion that we read a letter to Ian Golding and Mary Longacre, thanking them for their service. So maybe we think about what we want to say in that letter. There's no time limit on that, but I don't know, for the next meeting. Carl, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, really quickly. This is my last meeting. I resigned from the planning board effective August 1st and the CREC. Thank you for a brief interaction from April till now. It's really in my wheelhouse. There's some issues that have come up in my personal life that I have to attend to, so I don't have the time to devote to this committee. I wish you the best, and there's plenty to do, that's for sure. There's plenty to do in the next 20 to 30 years. So thank you all for helping me out and for working so hard on this. Vince and Leah, thank you for your support as a new member. And I'm really think that this committee is in good shape with its slate of officers. And I'm glad we got that done today. And good luck.
Thanks, Carl. Doug, a few more thoughts?
Just to volunteer to draft a note for Mary and Ian, if that's okay, and I'll bring it, or I submit it to Leah and Vince offline before the next meeting.
Sure, we can rip
Okay.
it apart at the next meeting. Yep, of course, no
Okay.
problem. Thanks for volunteering, Doug. Okay, so we're at the end. If there are no more comments, no more thoughts, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wait, who was first?
I don't know, was Joanna or me?
Okay, Joanna motioned to adjourn. Who's seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks, Carl. Roll call vote. We'll go Doug Rose,
Aye.
Gary Beller,
Aye.
Sarah Boyce,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
I
Joanna Roach,
Aye.
Carl Borchardt,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Rachel Freeman. You there, Rachel? Rachel is not there. All right, chair votes aye. That's it. See you in 2 weeks. Oh, there she is. Okay,
Aye. Sorry.
chair votes aye.
Couldn't unmute. Sorry.
No worries.
Congrats,
No worries.
congrats, Peter.
Thank you.
Congrats.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
All right, see you guys later.
Bye.